Good evening. On behalf of the Ex Gratia Law Journal team, I welcome you all to today's webinar on the topic Impact of COVID-19 on Children. We are happy to have our speaker, Mr. Ahmar Afaq, with us here today. To introduce our speaker, Mr. Ahmar Afaq is currently working as an assistant professor at Symbiosis Law School, Hyderabad. He is also taught at Faculty of Law, Aligarh Muslim University, which happens to be his alma mater as well. Mr. Ahmar Afaq is presently heading the Center for Human Rights, Symbiosis Law School, Hyderabad, and also the University Sports Board, Symbiosis Law School, Hyderabad. He has been honored with several awards by various organizations, recognizing his contribution towards the legal fraternity and the society. Having a strong inclination towards research, he has authored 3 books and more than a dozen publications. We welcome you, sir. As we all are aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought the entire world to a standstill, affecting lives of people and economies. This pandemic has affected people irrespective of age. While the consequences are being faced by all, some groups disproportionately bear the brunt of this pandemic. One such group is children. Our speaker for today, Mr. Ahmar Afaq, will be dealing with the topic Impact of COVID-19 on Children. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I am extremely thankful to the Ex Gratia Law Journal for inviting me for this discussion or webinar today. As we all know, that the whole affected by the pandemic now, and each and every individual is suffering in a different manner. Already, as Vaijayanthee have stated, that the effect of this or the impact of this pandemic is visible on each and every one of us. All groups have been affected by this pandemic in one manner or the other. Today, we will be focusing our discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on the children. For today's discussion, I'll be taking up certain key issues pertaining to the human rights or the children's right, like we'll be taking into discussion the education, issue of child labor, child marriages, child care relationships, child abuse, and mental health. So the structure of the today's webinar will be that I'll be speaking for 35 to 40 minutes, and then I'll take up the questions if there will be any. So as I've stated, that children are the one group which have been very badly impacted or affected by this pandemic of COVID-19. We are continuously coming across lot of reports, lot of news articles where we are witnessing that the children are suffering in different manner. So if you want to respect of the COVID-19 on this particular vulnerable group, you need to understand that how this COVID-19 is impacting them. For this purpose, we will be taking up the issues one by one, as I have mentioned initially, and we'll try to understand that how they are impacting the lives of the millions of children in India. The very first issue is pertaining to the education. Now we all being associated with the universities, with the colleges, with the schools, we do know that the majority of the schools are not functioning right now. And those schools who are functioning, they have gone virtual. Now, the very understanding of the gravity of this issue will come if we try to analyze that how this virtual education will impact those children who are not having those resources or those means available with them. We have seen the cases where either the father have committed suicide or the ward have committed suicide because of the lack of resources, and they were unable to continue their studies. Not only this, there are reports and there are the empirical data supporting that this pandemic is pushing the children out of the schools. Already we have a very high dropout rate of the children from the school, especially in the rural areas, and now the pandemic is only adding to it. Now just try to imagine that of the families in the rural areas or in the having the not viable, sufficient viable means will be helping their children to get the education right now. With all the schools which are functioning going online, every child needs a mobile phone or a laptop with good internet connectivity. Even if the phones are available in the family, there are 3 children and the classes are being scheduled in such a manner that all the 3 children have to attend the classes at the same time. Then how such condition will be helped? So the very first issue pertaining to the education is with regard to the non-availability of the resources which are required to continue their studies when it comes to the online mode. And there are high chances that this will result into a higher dropout rate from the schools. Quote, or if I mention a few of the discussions I had with the parents, they are not very much interested in continuing their students at least for this 1 year. And the argument they have that the online education or this virtual education or these platforms are not helping their children in a manner as they should have. Meaning thereby the children are not getting the proper education. They are narrating the incidences where the children are just putting the online lectures. They are just leaving them to go and they are playing. They are involved in other activities. Now it is not possible for the parents to look after that what the child is doing. If the child have asked the permission to go to a room and to listen to the lecture or to attend the class, what he is doing is not possible at all the times for the parents to look for. So in that scenario, in that case, they are stating that it is better for them just to discontinue their child for the 1 year till the pandemic is there, and they will get their ward admitted to the school. Now what are the chances that continuation of the studies for 1 year, the child will be again sent back to the school? And if the child is not going to the school, what he will be doing back at home? What effect it will have on his behavior? What impact it will have on his growth? How does this continuation of the school from the school for 1 year will impact his mental health, which we'll be covering in the later part of the discussion. Another issue which is again related to the closure of the schools is with regard to the midday meals. Now we all being aware that what midday meals are. So it was a meal which was provided by the schools or the government to the kids below the age between the age of 15 to 14. And there are reports which provide that it was the only meal for a good number of students. And that was also the force for the students to go to the school. Now in the case of schools being closed, the midday meals are also not being provided. Now think of those children for whom the only source of nutrition was that midday meal which was being provided to them by the school or by the government in that case. So not only the closure of the school not only impacting the education of the children, but the nutrition health of the many of the children as well. And it has to be seen from both the perspectives. And not only this, the mental health or the development of the child, or what he used to feel being amongst the peers. So the closure of the schools have pushed the children on the verge of being dropping out from the schools. Still, the online schools are functioning, and those parents who are having the resources, they are affected by economic means and do not have enough to pay for the school fees. They do not have enough to pay for the new course, and that is also impacting the education of the children in many cases. We have the data of the World Bank where it has been stated that 12 million Indians will be on the verge of extreme poverty during the lockdown. Now, when it is difficult for a family to meet both the ends, to have 2 meals a day, what are the chances that those families will be sending their kids to the schools and paying the hefty amount which is to be paid to the schools by the parents? That is one issue. The other issue which I would like to put forth is that of a child labor. Already we have the reports available with us. If I can quote the exact report number. So it is estimated that 152 million children in the world are in child labor right now. And according to the census of 2011, India have 10.13 million between the age of 5 and 14 involved in the child labor. Now there are apprehensions that this lockdown of COVID-19 will push more of the children into child labor. Why so? The first is the closure of the schools. When the schools are closed, the children are not going to the schools, they are staying back at their homes. The financial pressure is on the family. And at such a time, there are chances that the family will require the assistance from each and every member of the family. They require that all the members of the family assist them to meet both the ends. Now, in those cases, there are high chances that the children will be pushed into the child labor. We all have witnessed the reverse migration. We have seen the reports, the news coverage, where the thousands and millions of laborers were walking back to their homes. Now this migration or the reverse migration of the laborers will impact the children in both the manner. First, those who have migrated or reversely migrated back to their hometowns, they might be having debts, they might be having financial stress on them. To pay those debts or to meet the financial or to cover the financial loss or the stress, now again they will push their children into child labor. There are high chances of it. And when the good number of laborers have moved from the city to the villages or back to their hometowns, there is the scarcity or dearth of the laborers in the urban areas. And now with the lockdown being easing out, the work again being started, the factories being coming into action again, then there are again those children who are living on the streets. There are again those children who are belonging to the poor families. Now they are the easy prey for these factories and industries. So we cannot rule out that the number of the child laborers will increase. So this issue of child labor is such a grave issue that even the United Nations have declared the year of 2021 to be the year for the elimination of child labor. Even the Indian government have declared that by 2025 they will be eradicating the child labor. Now all these goals of the governments and the organizations will go in parallel. Icing on the cake is the labor law relaxations given by the number of states, increasing the number of hours. So for example, a family will be, an individual will be working in the factory for 9 hours, take 2 hours for commutation, 11 hours. So half of the day they have spent in the family, thus in the factory. How much time they will give to their children back at home? This brings us to another issue of child-care relationship. That the parents being in a position that they have to devote more and more time in the industries, in the factories where they are working. They will not be in a position to give enough time or the time required by the children at home. The children who are already under a stress because of the being quarantined or because being in lockdown. And that this will impact the child care relationship very badly. And that is something which a lot of us are not even thinking of. That how the child care relationship will be affected or impacted by this, all these things which are going on. Similarly, we have seen a surge in the child marriages. Now, if I try to relate it with the laborers who are working in the industries or the factories, now say for example, a family of 2 is having a girl back at home. Both the husband and wife are working in a factory on the outskirts of the city. Every day they are going to the factory, spending nearly 12 hours in the factory, working there, trying to meet both the ends for the families, responding to the financial responsibilities on them. Now, the very basic thought will be there in the mind that what of the girl child back at home? They are worried about her security. They are worried about her well-being. And that is why they will think, okay, let's get her married to anyone who is easily available. The personal laws, may it be a Muslim law or a Hindu law, not being strong enough against the child marriage. The child marriages are witnessing a surge. So many instances before us where the children are being sent into the marriages are being solemnized of the children aged 14 years, 15 years, especially the girl child. That is another issue which we need to look into. The loopholes in the laws and the socio-economic conditions of the parents, that how it is helping to strengthen the evil of child marriage. Similarly, the cases of child abuse. And when I say child abuse, we need to look into from both the aspect, the direct impact and the indirect impact. According to the reports, almost 50% increase was witnessed in the initial days of the lockdown in the the cases of child abuse, in fact of child sexual abuse. 50% surge. Now when there is a lockdown, everyone is there in their respective homes, and then the number of child abuse, sexual abuse cases are going up to 50%. Now who are the predators in these cases? Someone who is closely associated with the child. Again, the report suggesting that almost 93% of the predators are the ones who are very closely associated with the children. Now, imagine a situation where a victim of the child sexual abuse is forced to live with his or her predator in the same home, within the same four walls. Now, what is usually done when cases of child sexual abuse and where the accused or the predator is someone closely associated with the child or living in the same home or within the same four walls? The very first thing is done that the child is moved to a safe place. Now with the lockdown being there were no chances of moving that child from that particular home to a safe place, and that have added to the problems of the child. That was the direct impact. Indirectly, how it has contributed into the child abuse? The domestic violence cases have also witnessed a surge. The cases have gone up to 53%. Now, when these domestic violence incidents are taking place within the four walls or the boundaries of the home, there are high chances that the children are also witnessing it. Now, when a child is witnessing a domestic violence, that is also a kind of a child abuse against the child. So there have been surge in the direct cases of child sexual abuse, and with the rise in the domestic violence cases, again it has impacted, or it is the indirect child abuse. And what we know that there is a liking that anyone who have witnessed or gone through child abuse, there is likening that he or she will be later on will become a victim himself or herself, or will get involved into such kind of activities. So the child abuse being another issue involving the sexual abuse and the mental injury. Another issue, and the most important, because all the issues we have discussed till now, they are the ones which are known to us, which we can see, which we can go and work out, which we have something in our hand to help those children out of such situations. The most important part is with regard to the mental health. Now this lockdown or the COVID-19 have forced the children to stay back at their homes. Staying back at home can have the effect both the ways. Child is getting more time to spend with their family members. They have more time to play with their parents, with their siblings. And at the other hand, they do not have that freedom interacting with their peers, going out of the home. And in cases where the atmosphere in the home is not very good for the child, then it will have, or it will impact child negatively. So mental health being one such issue which we need to focus upon very minutely. Other than this, the cases where the children have been made to live in the quarantine. We know so many children who were sent to the quarantine centers, and they have spent almost 15-14 days living in the quarantine centers alone without their parents. There are cases where either of the family member have been tested positive, and he has been sent to the isolation ward and the other family members being quarantined. Later on, when the sampling was done, another adult family members were tested positive. And those who were, the children who were staying with them tested negative. But they cannot send them back to their homes because a test is further required. They need to be negative twice after the last contact with the person who have been tested positive. Now again, they have to spend a considerable amount of time in the quarantine centers or in isolation. Adversely, this will affect the mental health of the child. Or what impact it will help on the well-being of the child. So these are all the issues which I feel that they are very closely associated with one of the most vulnerable groups. If I give you an example of domestic violence only, we got the law specifically for the domestic violence law, a civil remedy, but still a law specifically for the cases of domestic violence, the Protection of Women from the Domestic Violence Act 2005. We also had 498 of the IPC. Now, despite having the criminal as well as the civil remedy available with us, still we are discussing that the number of domestic violence cases have seen a surge. It has gone up to 53%. Now, what does this reflect? This reflects that merely having a law is not sufficient to deal with an issue. And especially when it comes to the human rights, the inalienable, irrevocable rights guaranteed to every individual because of him or her being a human. Now, do we really care for these rights? Or merely having a right or a law providing to enforce such right will help? For an example, if a right to have a food is a basic right, we have constitutional provisions. Say Article 21 provides for it, or it comes within the umbrella of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. India being a welfare state, the government have the responsibility to provide for it. But how many of us is still suffering, who are unable to meet both the ends meet, or do not have enough to fulfill their nutrition requirements? So merely having a law is not enough. There is something, and that is to have something from us within the society, where each and every individual among us has to take that responsibility. So if you take an example of any barren land, so the barrenness of that particular land is not permanent. If a particular land is barren, if you will work on it, you will provide enough moisture, water, the fertilizers, and you will work on that barren land, it will convert into a fertile land. The number of good areas by the villagers have been converted into the forest areas, the areas which were considered to be barren lands. Similarly, is the situation of our society. If we feel that there are certain problems which are there in the society, so we need to take those kind of similar steps, the right steps, which can help us to remove that barrenness, or which can help us to fight that violation of human rights in the society. So the change will not come only with the law, or by having a law is not enough. We need to do something extra, something in addition to it. And that is where the responsibility of each and every one of us starts. That we have to realize that what human rights are, to extend those human rights to even to the person who is standing at the end of the line, right? So that is how we need to go on with this, because the question have been asked not pertaining to the child right specifically, but to the constitutional right. Right? Say for example, we are having a good number of measures have been taken by the governments. Now to whom those measures are being extended? To the citizens of India. But then what of those individuals who have taken the refuge in the country? Say the Rohingya refugee camps or other refugee camps. Were the government measures were being extended to them as well? They come within the purview of basic human rights. So that is where the individual's responsibilities start, and when the individual will try to bring a change, the society will change. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next question, sir. So you mentioned about mental health and how important it is. But in India, there still exists a stigma against mental health and its treatment, sir. But quarantining of children, as you had rightly mentioned, that it has adverse effects on the mental health and the growth of the children. So what steps do you think can be taken to provide help for children in this aspect?
Okay, when it comes to the mental health of the children and how they have been affected by this COVID-19, or being in quarantine, or being back there in lockdown in their respective homes. So now there is something which we need to look carefully. Like we have to look out at the behavior of the children. We have to see that what they are going through or how they are behaving. Say for example, if I can give you the basic conditions or the basic symptoms that the child is under stress, or there is some mental issues or mental health is being affected. So the common symptoms are said to be that if he is yelling, if he is shouting, if he is angry most of the time. So that is what we always say, or the outburst of the anger, immediate outburst of the anger. That is what we usually say when these are the symptoms that when a child or any individual is under a stress. Now what more we can look into, because when it comes to a child, we might not immediately respond to those issues of mental health of those children. As you have stated yourself, that mental health is one such area where the society or us do not focus. We do not consider mental health, we still consider it to be a stigma. Now in that case, there is a report of WHO where they have stated that you need to look for certain behavioral changes in the children. For example, they have studied if the child is facing problems in concentrating, if he is unable to concentrate on studies or on household things, the change in behavior, that what pattern was being witnessed by the parents. Now the child is behaving differently to it. Again, we can look for, if there is a change in the sleeping patterns. So all these are the symptoms which can give us an idea that the child is suffering from mental illness or is on the verge of being of mental illness. Now to the question what you have asked, what we can do. See, first of all, when we say the responsibility, if we can divide this answer into two parts, the responsibility of the peers, the responsibility of the family members, and the responsibility of the medical healthcare workers or the government. So from the part of the family, what they can do is to give them time, give them attention, listen to them, listen to what they are feeling, try to ease them out that okay, these are the testing times for every one of us, this is something we are going through. So the more of time, more of love, more of affection they will give to the child, there are chances the child will feel well, right? And the family members need to make such opportunities so where they can involve the child into playing some games, having some activities, not the activities like what we are doing these days, playing Ludo on mobile phone, right? But the activities where some physical work is being, or like playing games which needs a physical workout. So it will help them, it's relieving their stress. Right? It will help them in a certain manner. So that is what we can do from the family perspective. That we can give them time, we can give them attention, we can listen to them, and then we can play games with them, right? And all those things which will help them ease out their stress. Now, but this is not sufficient. What more is required, and which cannot be done by or individual or family member, because they might be not considerate enough, or they might be not having enough knowledge of these things. Now, what we can do is that we can have those pediatric healthcare workers to receive that formal training. So the healthcare workers can be given that formal training where they can facilitate the early identification of such symptoms in the kids, and to whom they identify that okay, they need the medical attention or they need counseling. The counselors, the psychiatrists can be arranged for them. Now it has been so easy that if we look into this pandemic, if it has created a lot of problems for us, it have given us some easy way outs as well, right? Now the counselors are available on the phone calls. We have so many helpline numbers, NGOs coming up for it. So you have to just call them and they have the counselor's appointment for you. You can take so similarly the pediatric healthcare workers, if trained in such a manner that they can identify or they can help in identification of such symptoms or such illness in the children, the counselors can be appointed for them, which I don't know how feasible or practical it is considering the vast length of our country and huge population, but that is something we can do.
Yes, sir, thank you. One more question, sir.
Yes.
So how do you think children who were unable to receive education due to the lack of technology in the rural areas and such catch up with their counterparts?
So the children who are unable to take the education, how can they
cope up or catch up with the counterparts?
Okay. Uh, See, as far as the online lectures are concerned, there have been certain measures which have been taken by state governments or the individuals. Say, for example, the government in Kerala, they have taken so many measures, and which have made it easier for the students to continue their studies. The lectures were being telecast online. The lecture or the asynchronous lectures can be made available on DTH. Now, even if we do not, if that can be one thing which can be done. If we do not have mobile phones in each and every home, it is difficult to provide mobile phones to individuals. But at the same time, there can be if the lectures are being telecast on TV, there can be made an arrangement where 5 or 10 or in a slum maintaining social distance, something can be played on a TV and children can attend in a particular area, in a particular colony, maintaining the social distance and all uh, the requirements which have been extended by the government. That can be done by through TV. Secondly, now when the lockdown is being eased out, those recorded lectures can be provided to the students to attend. Right, now, if again it will raise another question, that how can you expect a child to cover the syllabus in 6 months which the others have covered in say 10 months? So 4 months have already gone, so you can reduce the syllabus for them. Right, but that is what comes to my mind when I look at today. The measure taken by the Kerala government are really commendable. They have to a greater extent have tried to figure out what can be done in that for to cope up with these problems. Similarly, we can have the recorded lectures, or we can even try to, if the lockdown is being eased out right now, or maybe in next 1 month, the issue will not be to, hopefully to not that extent which it is today. We can have that short-term courses for the kids. Okay, say not necessarily the whole of the algebra will be taught again to them, but those parts of the curriculum which are necessarily important for them, or which are of utmost need for them to be progress in the next class, or to have the better understanding that what will be taught in the next class. Now that can be covered. So that is how we can go ahead with it.
Thank you, sir. So, would you mind answering?
Yes, please go ahead. Still have time.
Yes, sir. So, this pandemic has basically shifted the concentration of health as such away from the vaccinations, provision of vaccinations and such, sir. The health of pregnant women. So, how do you think now we can cope up with the vaccinations and the health of infants and pregnant women as such?
Uh, when you have raised this issue, that is something which we are working on, right? We have witnessed that the doctors who are so, reluctant in take up the cases, that those women who were initially taking the consulting a particular doctor at the initial ages of initial time of their pregnancy, and when they in the month of March and April, when the April and May, when the the fear was the highest among the citizens. So at that time, the doctors have clearly asked them that they are not in a position to take their case, to meet them, to have the routine checkups, right? So there have been so many cases where these cases have came up. In fact, there was a post-surgery case where there were such stitches which to be removed, and some pipes which were to be removed, and there was not even a single person who was ready to take up that case, or to come to the home and remove those or to do the what was necessarily required. So now definitely that have shifted, but and if you see that this whole pandemic have exposed that how or where our medical healthcare facilities stand. And now, I think from the June onwards, or July onwards, the doctor will start giving or start taking, consulting the patients through the video calls. But initially it was also not being done. And there is something which is psychological in these cases, that a patient feels relief only when that he or she consults a doctor. Now even he or she has consulted a doctor has said that you are fine, nothing has happened to you. there is something psychological where the patient will start feeling better. Okay, the doctor said that nothing is serious to me. Till the time he is not contacting the doctor, he is not consulting the doctor, he will be feeling like what has happened to me, there is something grave with me. And even when this the kind of pandemic is like that, even if you are sneezing, then you are afraid, and more than you the others are afraid that this is corona. And again, from the doctor's perspective also, again it was a hard time for them as well. In fact, I really want that if anyone is coming up of any study on the mental health of the policemen, medical healthcare workers, or the sanitation workers who were working throughout during this pandemic, that how it has affected them as well. So we need not to think of from the individual's perspective, from their perspective as well, because again the human rights are for them as well, right? So it has exposed our medical healthcare facilities, it has exposed our governments, it has exposed our system, that we were not having enough ventilators, we were having not enough beds, we were not having isolation wards for the COVID patients, and not only the COVID patients, the other patients who would have been treated were not treated because of the fear of this COVID-19. Right, so it, to an extent, it has exposed our medical healthcare system, and rightly so. If the whole dialogue is being shifted towards the medical healthcare, it's a good thing for us. Right now, as far as the vaccine is concerned, you or me cannot go into the laboratory and can prepare a vaccine. The teams, the organizations who work on this particular issue, they are working on it. And we are very hopeful that soon we will have the vaccine as well. But yes, the lot of problems have been faced on the health front when it comes to this pandemic.
So thank you. So that's all for the questions. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, so I have saved this last 5 minutes for the concluding remarks, and uh, we are right on track.
Yes.
So, but when it comes to what can be done with regard to these issues pertaining to the child and the impact of COVID-19 on them, then I think most of you have covered through your questions, like what can we do with regard to the mental health. I think that we have covered. What we can do with regard to the education, or to bring to cover the losses which have already been which have already been there. We have dealt with this as well. Now, when it comes to child abuse, again, that is one such area, or the child labor. Say, taking the child labor first, the relaxations which are being provided in the labor laws by the state governments, almost a dozen of the state government have relaxed the labor laws. So, like the whole of the labor laws will not be considered to be in existence. Only the few of the labor laws will be there. So if we try to look into the nature of the labor laws, the very nature of the labor laws or any such legislation is to give a voice to a voiceless. So these laws are being provided for the weak to stand against the stronger. So now if these kind of relaxations are being given just for the purpose of easing of business, just for the purpose of having more foreign direct investment, now these changes, or definitely the economy is needed to be revived. But that revival of the economy cannot come at the cost of the laborers. That easing of business opportunities cannot come at the cost of the lives or the mental well-being or the health of the laborers. So the governments need to think, instead of just relaxing the laws, the government need to think of something where say for example, the government have given the reasoning being that the number of hours is to be increased because the social distancing has to be followed. Number of work will not be. Now, when you have suspended the laws which were providing for the inspection of the factories, and in this pandemic, there are no chances that someone will be coming for the investigation that to whom you have employed in your factory. and whether they are maintaining the social distance or not. That who knows that you have taken the permission of 15 and you are employing 30, and whether those 30 you have employed are in maintaining the social distance or not, whether due benefits are being extended to them as or not. So I feel that when it comes to the child labor, when it comes to the child marriages and child care relation, because we have seen or discussed them in tandem with each other pertaining to the how the labor laws or the laws, the factories or the industries will be exploiting them or have pushed them on the verge of being exploited or making them more, you know, easy target for the factories or the industries. Now the mere relaxations will not do. The government need to think of something where they can ease out the business opportunities, where they can look for revival of the economy, but not at the cost of the weaker sections, not at the cost of the vulnerable groups. Coming to the child marriages. Now child marriages, that one such a evil very rooted in our society since long time. Now they are despite having the laws, despite having the laws which are providing against it, like to say, taking an example of Muslim law, the age of majority starts at the age of puberty, and the marriage is allowed after the age a person have attained the age of puberty. Similarly, the age of marriage under the Hindu law has been provided to 18 and 21 years. But if anyone solemnizes the marriage pertaining to that particular age, the marriage will not be a void or voidable marriage. Under the Hindu law, it will have the effect of valid marriage, because neither it is covered in the section 11 nor it is covered in the section 12 of the Hindu Marriage Act. Now, so these are the two. I will go back to the same statement which I have made, and I think that will be the concluding remark of this today's discussion as well, that no land by itself, if the barren land is there, the barrenness is not permanent. Right steps taken in the right direction can make it fertile. Similarly, our society, if there are certain problems, certain issues, human right violations prevailing in our society, what is required is the right step from each one of us, and when we will take a right step, we will see the difference. That is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Knowledge has a beginning but no end, and I'm certain we have all made a great start, sir. On behalf of the Ex Gratia Law Journal, I take immense pleasure in presenting the vote of thanks. I first would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Ahmar Afaq, for taking his time off his busy schedule and enlightening us on the impact of COVID on children. Thank you, sir. I thank our viewers for attending the live webinar and for being a wonderful audience. Finally, I would like to thank the members of the Ex Gratia Law Journal team